much, and thank you, Hillary. That was exactly the space we've been working in for the last 10 years. I think every time Hillary changed a slide, I thought, yes, that's exactly what the problem is, or the challenge, as you say. So Cloud Chamber, there really have been some big nuts to crack. I've been working on this full time for 3 years, and it launches on the 4th of October, so we're right on the cusp of it. And this is really the big nuts that Hillary talked about. This is our best effort at cracking basically all of them. Creative workflow, how do you tell a story in this new medium, how do you scale it in a market, how do you even tell a story where the audience is involved, how do you avoid confusion, how do you explain it, how do you get film people to work with game people, and they are introverts and extroverts. That's the biggest problem we have, I think. It's all, yeah, this is what we've been doing. And for me, right now, 8 days before the launch, it all boils down to how do I explain it, because now we have to get the audience to understand this weird creature that we've done. So what is it? Cloud Chamber is a premium online mystery. What is that? It's something you pay for. 3 years ago, it took me about 3 hours to explain what Cloud Chamber is. Nicky Thomason, the first guy up there, I've worked with him for 6 years on 30 projects. First, I had to explain it to him, or we explained it to each other. Then we had to explain it to the Danish Film Institute, who financed it. And on the right out there, there's a film consultant who sort of sits for hours and looks at us while we're trying to explain this thing that nobody's ever seen before. Then about 2 years ago, I think we were down to about 2 hours it took to explain it. And then we explained it to Vibeke Windelø, who produced Lars von Trier's, a lot of his big films, and she came on board. And then I basically spent 2 hours every time explaining it to every new creative person who came on the team, from the editor to the game designer to the actors to the sound designer to the photographer. 2 hours each and every time, because obviously their contribution was part of it. And it's all about uncertainty. We don't know how it's going to end up. It's all about these people contributing. So there was a lot of hours put into explaining it. About 6 months ago, I think I could explain it in about 30 minutes. At that point, we had a trailer. We called it the mystery trailer. So that helped a lot. And that helped me to explain it to our CEO now, who's bringing it to market with us, and to the mystery guy on the far left, who's our investor, who's actually investing in bringing this to market. So that was, we were down to about 30 minutes. Today, I think actually I can explain it in 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Because we've made a film that explains it. But I'm not going to show it to you until the end of this presentation. I'm sorry. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer. So you can tell me when we get to it. So Hillary's actually said a lot about this. I've been haunted for 10, maybe 13 years about the idea of what is the narrative form for the internet. How do you explain something that doesn't exist yet? How will it work? Will it work? What's the form? How do we tell a story? How do we explain the characters? And right now, the struggle is how to get it to first-time users. So I'm going to have to go way back to the beginning, but before I do that, I'm going to show you the mystery trailer that helped us get it down to about the 40 minutes that I have today.
Just stand back. Visions, they keep appearing in my head over and over again. Could an electronic signal be implanted into the human brain in some way?
The sound you were blown away by, Kathleen, I pulled it through that antenna directly from the atmosphere. It has all the components of a signal. This next song is dedicated to Kathleen. That's never happened before.
What we're doing is classified and protected under national law.
I don't want to be filmed.
We traffic in state secrets.
So I found there is a system to it. It's not random.
Don't follow in her footsteps. Follow in mine.
The site will be up on the 4th of October. From 1999 to 2009, I produced and directed these 35 projects. And the idea was, how do you tell a story on the net? But first came the money. How do we even get the money, as Hillary said, to do that? So what we ended up doing was creating learning projects, advertising projects, recruitment projects. Anybody who had a need that was on the net, we basically made stories for them. So we did kids projects, the split one up there, across media on 5 different media channels. We did this one up here is there isn't. Never mind. The top left one, we did a love story for a bank. We did a thriller, making it exciting to become an accountant. They go to hell for that. We just kept on doing it. And I sometimes wonder why, but we were just grabbed by this idea of basically figuring it out step by step. And about 2006, we made a discovery. We basically discovered that if we took mysterious film clips and put them inside a closed social network, and then gave people game mechanics so they could feel they were progressing, then we actually had a new kind of story. It was all on one site, and people felt they were part of it, and they really got involved in a way that was internet-based, a way that was not about sitting in a darkened room like we are now and watching somebody else's story, but a way where you were part of it, and it was a good story. It wasn't, early YouTube or anything like that. It wasn't, you were part of it and you contributed, but you were sure that it was a good story. And that's been a big thing. So what we did was, the first one, the TTC5 here, was a thriller that we made as a human resource project for a telco. They had 13,000 employees. We basically pretended that the customers were being kidnapped. So for 3 weeks, the employees had to go in and help solve the mystery of why the customers were being kidnapped. And this was because the corporate values were askew. And then in 2007 to 8, we did an 8-month-long mystery that in Denmark they had a research ship that sailed around the world for 8 months, and all the media covered it. It was natural science for the kids. And we basically pretended that we had a guy on board. We built a community around him, and every day we had authors sit and interact with the audience, and he would upload little films that he was talking to the camera and so on. He discovered there was a blind passenger on board who was making weird experiments with magnetic fields down in the hull of this real ship. And the whole crew turned against him, so everybody hated him except the users. So the only people he could talk to for 8 months were the users. And it slowly turned into this sort of James Bond for 15-year-olds, where he was building a doomsday device next to the engine. It was going to wipe out the entire planet with a cold fusion chain reaction. And it was an altered reality game. We pretended it was real. We had kids writing to us, and we had to ask them, or tell them that it was fiction, but ask them not to tell the others, and that sort of thing. So we really got some knowledge about how to suspend disbelief in this meeting. And then in 2009, up to the big global climate summit in Copenhagen, we did basically the same thing for 16 weeks, with better production value, and we learned a lot. And at this point, YouTube and Facebook had begun to figure out, okay, likes, that's a piece of grammar that basically seems to work when users like each other. There was a lot of interface development going on all over the internet, so we were able to integrate that into the climate mystery. And it went out in 5 different countries, and we had teaching materials for those countries as well. But all these 3 mysteries were time-based, so they basically unfolded week by week, and when the time was over, they disappeared forever. And it was a little unsatisfying for us to spend years working on something, and then it was basically a kind of internet theater, because it disappeared as soon as it was over. So in 2013, what happened was, or that's now, in 2009, about then I was talking to the Danish Film Institute, and they were beginning to become interested. They'd never invested in anything internet related before, at least not with film money. And they basically said, so if we were to finance your next story, what would you like to do? And after working 35 projects, satisfying clients, that's the kind of thing that really, that's what you want to hear. So the big jump here is that this one is permanent, so it's there, everything's there from the start, and it stays there. You explore it as you would explore a map or World of Warcraft. And then it's user paid, so this is premium It's the first 3 levels are free, and then you have to pay, I think, about £8 if you want to play the rest. Will that work? We don't know. We're waiting to see. Wait till the 4th of October. So, a very big jump here was that Vibeke Windeløw came on board in 2010, and having produced 30 feature films, Dogville, Breaking the Waves, lots of TV series and so on, together with her we were really able to jump the production value on the film part. And of course the internet part we already felt we had pretty good hold on. The next big jump was that I was able for the first time in 10 years since I'd been making short films and so on to actually tell a personal story. So what I did, this is my parents. My father is a geneticist and my mother is a microbiologist, so I'm raised totally without God. There is no God in biology. Darwin completely knew any concept of God out of that whole profession. It's been very different because this project is very much about astrophysics, and astrophysicists are actually pretty religious, which is kind of interesting. In my family, my grandfather and my grandmother on the other side, they were in Denmark called Indre Mission, which is an extremely religious sort of faction. So you can imagine what Christmas dinner was like in the Fonnesbech household, with these 2 academics educated in the city, going back, and the grandparents being extremely religious and so forth. We had electron microscope pictures on the walls in my childhood home. That was the kind of scientific upbringing that I'm bringing to you now, I think. My parents raised me like this. They didn't say it, but that was the basic world vision. There is nothing out there. There's no life. We are a micro on a rock, rotating around a pulsating gas explosion that may go off at any time. There's no God. You're alone. Live with it. So we gave that worldview to Gustav, who is played by Jesper Christensen in our mystery. You may know him from a couple of James Bond films, The Casino Royale, and he was Mr. White, Quantum of Solace. And then I started talking to astrophysicists, and I was very pleasantly surprised that I felt perfectly at home talking to these guys. And I'd spent 15 years trying to escape from my home, as everybody does. And it took me, I think, a year to realize that the reason I was having such a good time with these astrophysicists was because I was raised by scientists. But when I finally realized it, I also started to realize what's the main sort of crux, what kind of scientific story can we tell here, because I was obsessed with that idea. And I think the internet is very suitable for mixing fiction with fact and mixing fiction with real knowledge, because one of the basic pleasures of the internet is discovery and discussing things and so on. And one of the great things, as Hilary says, about documentaries is also that you have unlimited backstory. And if you want complexity, you want people to discuss this, unlimited backstory is a good thing to have, because as soon as they hit the limits of your story world, it starts to break down. So mixing documentary with fiction is a really excellent thing in this medium. And I wanted to figure out the universe. So Cloud Chamber is about that. And until 80 years ago, we actually thought that the Milky Way was the entire universe. So the Milky Way, our sun is about in the unfashionable perimeter here, and there's 100 billion stars in it. 100 billion stars in it. And then in about the 30s, the Mount Wilson Observatory went up, and it turned out that there were a few stars outside it, or glimpses of light, and we thought, okay, so it's one universe, and there's a few sort of refugees out there. And then we realized that those were galaxies too. And at the last count, there's 100 billion galaxies, and each galaxy has 100 billion stars. If we hadn't had a financial crisis, we wouldn't even be able to comprehend those numbers. So it's big. This is the size of a coin seen from, I don't know, 10 meters away. It's that big a part of the sky, and all those are galaxies. So imagine wrapping that in a 360-degree ball around you, and you've got something like 100 billion times 100 billion galaxies in all directions. So it's big. How can we be alone? I mean, come on. Even if you're the most pessimistic, statistical something, how can we be alone? It's just, it doesn't seem possible. And that little disc up there, right next to the word sun, that's how much we've listened to and looked at so far with the primitive telescopes that we have. And we are at the moment discovering one new inhabitable planet a day. I think we're about 600 or 700 now. We can't see if they're inhabited, they're too far away. We can't talk to them, but they're suitable. They're close enough to the sun that the water is flowing. They're far enough away that it hasn't been frozen, if there is water. So, you know, 100 billion times 100 billion, something's out there, I think. Cloud chamber is about whether there's something out there or not. Yes, I'm wondering, yes. So, let's get to the experience. This is a rough draft of the landing page. It's being updated as we speak. So the users will basically arrive here. They will be able to, in the top right-hand corner, sign in with their Facebook account, or you can just sign in with their email. Down here we show them a film, and this is where the story begins film will be played. There's a little bit of explanation, and there's the big glowing try for free button. This page is a work of a mixture of science and art, and we expect to be revising it every week for the next 6 months, because this is where the internet starts to, you know, show its real force, that we can actually look at how people are reacting and when. And that's a big part of the grammar of the internet as well, where a film, you shut it, you close it, you ship it, it's locked. Internet fiction is a living creature. It's like a building that you can keep rearranging, and I think you have to, because we're going to basically be watching and seeing where people get confused and where they drop off and when they get it and when they don't and so on. So in that way, we're a little bit back to the theater, but we've changed the rules of our own game by making, you know, the assets in there permanent. So we're moving things around, we're not rebuilding. When you go in, it's basically like a 3D WikiLeaks. I don't know if you can imagine that. You know, WikiLeaks is a large collection of confidential files, and our narrative concept is basically that there is a commercial version of WikiLeaks that makes it possible for anybody to go in and discuss confidential files. And that's what you're going into with Cloud Chamber. So I'm going to play this, but if we can do it with the sound down, just a little bit of sound will be fine. So the mountains are actually like data visualization. So the higher the mountain, the more important the file. Now we're approaching a data file, a film. So I'm going to play this again. And this time I'm going to switch the sound off. This is level 1, which is the most realistic. It becomes more and more spacey and psychedelic as you advance. So you're flying into a 3D database. The higher the mountain, the more important the file. So you're navigating between media files. And small mountains indicate that the media file is not that important, and large mountains indicate that it's very important. So this one is obviously very important. And when you open it up, basically you get a console that's just like Facebook. So now you can watch the film, or you can start discussing. So you can have the film running on the left, or you can full screen it. We'll be offering high fidelity or high definition to paying customers. And basically, those things on the right are forums. So we predefined discussion topics for this specific film. And I'm going to show it to you now, and it's about 3 minutes long. So this is the first confidential found footage film file that the users encounter.
So we need some people really relax, man. I do this all the time. Smart for this, man. Seriously? Hey, Lars! Okay. signal follows us up. That's our emergency exit. This is how I recorded the sound you heard tonight, Kathleen. This little wonder can be linked up to the entire skyline of antennas.
I don't get it, so what?
He's created his own pirate radio network for broadcasting and receiving radio signals.
Why? For people who want to hear my music. Well, why not just have them buy your CD instead of getting arrested?
Yeah, this is seriously illegal. I'm leaving now.
Wait, you don't understand. That's not why I brought you up here. Not the only reason.
Okay, rain check, Max.
The sound you were blown away by, Kathleen, I pulled it through that antenna directly from the atmosphere. And it has all the components of a signal.
What are you talking about?
Just what I said. It's like a signal. The sound has a pattern to it, like a bass line.
You think you found a broadcast signal floating through space?
No, you're thinking old school, Kathleen. It's like a message in a bottle, like a piece of sound that's part of a communications network. What are you guys talking about?
You've recorded another radio signal. Look around you. You're surrounded by them.
No, I've heard it before. At the Institute. Look, I'll show you. You might want to back up a bit. Okay. I've never run this much power through my equipment before, but you should be okay with my upgraded gear. Look up. That's never happened before.
Yeah, and it can't be good.
Can I hear the signal on its own?
Okay, can someone please clue me in on what's going on? Thanks.
So, you see that, and then you have the forums to choose from, and you go into one of them, what is the signal, and you can basically see the discussion just like on Facebook. So you can post, and you can reply, you know how it works, but you can also both like and dislike. This is after all an investigation, so we're trying to figure out what's true. And we also know that not all our users are creative, so we don't demand that you post. You can just get away with liking and disliking. You're basically guessing how popular is this post. And we know that the main part of a social media audience is actually not creative, so that's a very important thing. This is the first map that I flew you through, seen from above, so it really is at the factory sort of setting. They're using a tropical island metaphor to lead you through a 3D database. So you can see there's 5 media files on level 1. The what is the signal, her decision, preparations you're about to enter, and then you can move on to level 2. There's 10 levels in all, and as you can see at the bottom, the signal actually invades the database. So the landscape starts to distort and degrade, and the message from the signal starts to actually influence how the landscape is shaped. There's about 150 media files in there in all, so each level has one feature film level or quality media file like the one you just saw. Then there's video diaries where they're talking to the camera. There's emails, you're reading private emails, blueprints of the Peterson Institute, scientific journals. You're really basically figuring out what happened, what's true, what's not true, is there a signal, who killed Ingrid's mother, and so on and so on. The first 3 levels are free, And then there's a paywall, and again, I think it's going to be about £8 for the rest, or you can buy one level at a time if you are still unsure. Along the way, another thing you're doing is you're basically putting together fragments. So there's one specific scene that you're picking up little by little how it actually went, and it starts like this. It's quite short.
So I guess this means we're not going back to the white party.
Thomas! Last camera. Make it 45 degrees, failing each other. We're in the foreground. Hurry up. Hurry up, it's now. Max.
Yeah.
And of course, a big part of the pleasure here is figuring out when did it happen, when did this happen, when did the other part happen, discussing it, searching for clues in the dialogue and in the way they dress and so on. What is the chronology of this thing? And it really runs on a lot of layers. There's a backstory about Kathleen's mother running from the early 60s to the 80s when she dies. And there's a mystery about that and how she met Kathleen's father and so on. Then there's the present story of the three young people who discover something that happened in the past, and why is there a signal from another world that's been hidden for 40 years? There's the whole relationship between Kathleen and her father, which is a separate storyline and so on. So in a film, this would be pre-edited. And of course, the individual pieces are pre-edited, but we're really letting you navigate it, much like you would navigate a news stream. It's up to you to put it together in discussion with the other people who are there. And then, perhaps because I'm quite hard of hearing, I'm quite obsessed with music. And one of the things that worked really well here is we brought in a lot of electronic music from people like Burial and Schandemüller and Louis Rouge. And the texture of that just fits perfectly with all this cosmic Hubble telescope photographs and so on. So each level, I mean, the basic premise is basically that electronic music, the rhythms in it, are actually structured like the mathematics underlying the secrets of the universe and how particles react and so on. So that's a part of the backstory as well. So each level is actually built on a specific electronic music number or track. And as the signal corrodes the database, the noise starts to invade your experience. So as you're traveling, flying through it, the noise in time to the music in order to earn points and get the full experience. So this is the third way that you can make it through. If you're more of a musical reaction person, you can basically score enough points like that to get through the entire mystery. So even if you don't like chat, you can groove your way through it and watch the films, basically. So grooving through it, you'll eventually get to the next fragment from this mysterious scene that's unfolding. That's again quite short. And what you're seeing here is really a creative principle or dogma that we instituted quite quickly, which is that apart from the central poetic piece of license that we've taken with the signal, everything is scientifically correct. The only thing is that we're making things visible that would not normally be visible. Because what we patent this scene on is that subatomic particles are constantly coming down through space. They're whizzing throughout the universe ever since the Big Bang. They pass through you, the planet, whatever. And they, in our story, are the containers of the signal. So the signal is actually embedded in subatomic particles, and it reacts to the music. Now, we have the European Space Agency as a partner. I started talking to them about 3 or 4 years ago. And after spending days explaining to them exactly what it was we wanted to make, they let us actually basically use their entire media library. So we actually have 30 documentary clips that you also find as you're going through the database, 3 to 5 minutes each, taken from the European Space Agency's database. You don't need to take the light down for this one. So this really gives us an amazing feeling that also fits with both the texture and visually and the music and everything. So as you travel into the database, you're traveling both into the past, you're traveling into the characters' lives, but you're at the same time traveling out into the universe. So we structured those 30 clips like a gigantic cosmic zoom where you start on the surface of the Earth and basically go out to the magnetosphere, out to the solar system, out to the galaxy, out to all the galaxies, and out all the way back to the birth of the universe. And when we're testing this on high school students, there's no barrier between fiction and documentary, and I mean that in a positive way. They don't stop up and say, hey, you were telling me a story, why are you teaching me this? The big trick, and I'm going to share it with you, is just don't tell them it's homework, because if you do that, it's dead. They're never going to try, not even for a second. So this is entertainment, and just sneak the documentary stuff in there. That took a while to convince the European Space Agency of as well, but it worked. So one of the big questions we're pushing here is, what is the signal? Is it really a signal from somewhere else? Where could it be from? When is it from? Or is it actually a natural phenomenon? So everything is written very specifically through enormous creative struggles between me and Darren Mercado, the screenwriter, so that you're never really sure if it's a signal or not. Obviously we know, and we very much want to avoid, people feeling cheated. So we know exactly what it is, but there should always be the doubt. And the fact is that the signal only manifests in Kathleen's head. So, is she losing her mind, or is there actually something going on, or is it too strange? And Arthur C. Clarke had this rule that any sufficiently advanced technology would seem like magic. And after mulling on that for years now, I think actually we need to take that to the next stage. Any sufficiently advanced technology would seem like nature. And I think that's very true. If something was, just 2,000 years ahead of us, or a million years ahead of us, we would think that what they were doing was already built into the universe. If there was something embedded in particles, we would think that that was the way particles had always behaved. So how do you actually discern whether this thing is real or not, or whether it's artificial or not? This is one of the questions that we're basically taking people on. And that's why this final clip in the short fragment series is quite important. Let's do it with the sound. Of course, once you've seen that, you get to see the entire 3-minute scene where they go up on the roof, they start the music, they start the weird thing they're doing, the atmosphere starts to react, and so on. So, the ideal here is really to make a contained internet fiction on a single site. We're going to make an app later if I can convince my investors that it will be worth it. So it'll run on tablets and your iPhone and so on, and you can keep playing it while you're on the train and so on. But first release, it's only going to be on the web on a single site. And we're really trying to make something that's every bit as emotionally involving, as deep, as varied as a traditional media experience, like a novel or a movie or a TV series. The stars are a big part of that, giving that sense of recognizability. Sarah Yord is a rising star in Denmark. Jesper Christensen's a James Bond villain. Ethan Anthony is from the Game of Thrones. He was Renly Baratheon, the guy who got killed by the Shadow Warrior in season 2.
Spoiler alert.
I know it was a pity. I don't think it was funny from his career point of view, but everybody gets killed in that series. William is an upcoming. We've got 2 Welshmen in this. That's a bit strange, but yeah, maybe there's something in the signal about that. So really, we're telling a story about that combines astrophysics and teenage rebellion. Kathleen discovers that her mother died, perhaps because of something her father did. Her mother died working with a signal that she found, and her father has kept it hidden for 20 years. There's something going on. There's a love story between the girl and the boys evolving. There's the whole rebellion thing about Kathleen rebelling against the ultra-rationalist worldview that she's being raised with. That seems strikingly familiar. And so on and so on. There's police reports, there's blueprints with weird scribblings on them, and so on. And that brings me to the final bit, which is really how do we explain all of that to a first-time user whose attention span before he or she is gone again is nothing. This is the worst zapper medium ever. People give it 10 seconds and then they leave. How do we explain that it's found footage? It's uploaded files that one of the characters is actually uploaded to the site. How do we explain that you have to explore it yourself and you have to navigate and you have to investigate and discuss it? And it mixes fiction films with documents, and it's supposed to feel natural, but we're actually mixing things in a way that we haven't really seen it mixed before. We're using avant-garde transmedia grammar, but we're telling quite a classical story. We have to prepare and motivate the users for a 10 to 15 hour long experience that has multiple layers, multiple chronologies, mixes astrophysics. So our answer is that we have made a film. It's 2 minutes and 50 long, and the only way we're going to get people to watch that is to market it, and that's the challenge now. So when people arrive at the landing page to finish off, this is what they see. And this is the state of the art for us as how to explain this. Oops, I don't think it started.
In 1975, toward the end of the space race between the United States of America and the USSR, an astrophysicist working at the Peterson Institute named Ingrid Hansen made what she believed to be the greatest discovery of the 20th century and possibly of humankind. It was built into the smallest pieces of matter floating through space, but this discovery was quickly buried by the Peterson Institute's managing director, Gustav Peterson. In spite of its gloried history as one of the world's leading scientific bodies, the Institute kept the knowledge of this find secret for over 4 decades. Until now.
Kathleen.
Okay, this is the first journal marking the beginning of the cloud chamber experiment. My father has finally agreed to let us work inside the Institute to explore the phenomenon we've discovered in biology. Also, I've persuaded Max to bring his work over to the Institute.
I'll put it through that antenna directly from the atmosphere. It has all the components of a signal.
I've also brought on Thomas, a young documentarist.
Why is the Institute using me to make this documentary? What's the point of it?
What we're doing is classified and protected under national law. We traffic in state secrets.
I know that I'm feeling exactly what my mother felt while she was still alive.
She got herself killed. Don't follow in her footsteps. Follow in mine.
My name is Thomas Roberts. I was part of the team Kathleen Peterson assembled, hired by the Institute itself to record her work. All of the material from the project comes from my own recordings and research, but the Institute owns it. It's illegal for me to publish or broadcast it. What is Gustav Peterson and the Peterson Institute so afraid of? What are they hiding?
I don't want to be filmed.
Who killed Ingrid Peterson? What is it they found? What's Kathleen hiding? All the information needed to help uncover the mystery of Cloud Chamber has been uploaded here.
It has all the components of a signal.
This database has one sole purpose: to make it impossible for governments and corporations to continue hiding the truth from the rest of the world. To make the database accessible for everyone, the information is presented using a landscape metaphor. Remember, the more important the data, the higher the island.
Where'd they start, Tom? They already have.
So we're not quite there yet, but we're getting close. Thank you.